Blog Talk Radio.
Well, here we go, ladies and gentlemen, across this great country, batten down the hatches. Cleveland has come to the forefront. Yours truly, Mark Mancini, producing this, 347-205-9631. We'll bring you to the front of the line. This is the American Sports History Podcast, hosted by my good friend Peter Ray. Without further ado, let me give him the podium, the mic, the red carpet. Peter, first of all, how are you? Second of all, how can people get a hold of you? Third of all, you brought in a winner with this guest today.
Oh, hi, Mark. I'm doing well. I have a website, Adventures in History with Peter J. Ray. I have a YouTube channel. It's my name, Peter J. Ray. And tonight we have our guest tonight is Mark Heffernan, who is from Bakersfield, California. He still lives there. He went to California State University in Fresno. He's been doing NFHS Network Play-On Sports Play-by-Play, Kern High School District Game Day host, and NorCal Sports TV Prep and JC Sportscaster. Welcome to American Sports History, Mark Heffernan.
Hey, thanks, man. I haven't been doing any of that stuff since March, so I've been very frustrated this year. It's been a very odd season, but thanks a lot for the introduction. And it's been very hot here this summer. Usually I'm gone for 2 or 3 weeks in the Bay Area, but it's been very hot up there, so it's kind of been frustrating, but I've been working out quite a bit and doing what I can to kind of get through all this COVID-19 stuff.
Mark, what's the first year that you followed sports as a boy?
I don't know about the year. I was probably about 8 or 9 years old.
And what year would that be?
That'd probably be sometime mid-'60s.
Oh, in the 60s. So what year were you born?
I was born in 54.
54. Oh, the year Cleveland got swept in the World Series by the New York Giants.
That's right.
54. Oh, so and are you a Los Angeles sports fan?
Primarily, yeah. I like the Rams and the Lakers and the Dodgers. And UCLA over USC, yes. I like a lot of teams in Southern Cal in various sports.
For a boy, I mean, you were Dodgers won in 60. You were 9 in 63. You remember the 63 Dodgers?
Well, not that much. I remember, Koufax and those guys, but I was pretty young that time, and games were on the radio back then. They played a lot of their contests during the day when I was in school. I knew they were very good, but I didn't really follow them that much when I was 9.
Well, how about the 70s Dodgers with Steve Garvey at first? Davey Lopes, and that was
Ron Say, the Penguin at third base. Yeah, those are great teams. That was an outstanding infield.
It's funny, and Tommy Lasorda was such a charismatic manager, and I'm actually doing research for the 77 Cleveland Indians video I want to do, and so I've been when I do that, I research the World Series, and the Dodgers here, they lose 2 World Series, 77-78, which is very demoralizing, but they bounce back and win in 81.
Yeah, beat the Yankees. And they also won
they beat the
Yankees. Right.
So that's very impressive. Well, and of course the Lakers. Wow, what all those years! Oh, talk about a lot of championships. Do you remember Chamberlain playing for the Lakers?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I was following them back with Chamberlain, Jerry West, and then later on Gil Goodrich and Happy Harrison and those people. Yeah, and I listened to their games with Chick Hearn before it got on TV on KCAL 9. So that's been my favorite team for a long time, even more favorite than the Dodgers. My dad loved Ben Scully. I have nothing against Ben Scully, but my favorite announcer of all time was Chick Hearn. And then Dick Enberg right there, too, because he did UCLA and the Rams, and he's a very versatile play-by-play broadcaster. He kind of retired San Diego before he passed away. But, yeah, had some great broadcasters in Southern California over the years.
Well, and then the 80s Showtime with Jabbar and Magic Johnson, and that was quite I thought Pat Riley was the coolest guy in the world.
Yeah, even cooler than Mark Mancini with that slick back hair and those nice suits, those $10,000 suits and everything, and that was L.A., man. That was Showtime. I remember
managing
it for you guys.
Remember when the Lakers repeated, and I think it was the parade or something, and they had Magic Johnson at the microphone, and he said, "And it's party time again."
Remember they won 87 and 88, and after the Lakers won the first championship before the back-to-back, Riley went on the parade and said, "We're going to win it back-to-back." And the guys looked at him. So they went back-to-back. After they won 2 in a row, they didn't want Riley to talk and say they were going to three-peat. As you know, they never did, but with the Shaq and Kobe, they three-peated.
Yeah, it's funny. That's something that Pat Riley and Joe Namath both have in common. They both use the word "I guarantee it" for Namath in the Super Bowl in early '69, and with like you said, Pat Riley for repeating.
Well, it's tough to repeat, as you know, in any sport, Peter, because a lot of your players have to have great years the following season. Injuries are such a key facet as to whether you're going to win or not. And other teams get better, especially now. Teams can get better within a year or two by signing free agents, making great trades. It's amazing what New England has done, but it's very tough, I think, to be one of the top teams in your sport over an 8 to 10 year span. Got to be great management, by the way.
I thought the '88 Dodgers were one of the coolest teams of all time.
That was a team that I don't think had more talent than the teams they've had recently, but that team had heart. They played much better in the playoffs than they did during the regular season. The Dodgers we have seen in the last 6 or 7 years, their depth helped them win a lot of games, but a lot of those guys don't come through in the clutch against better pitchers when there's more pressure on. That team in '88 kind of fooled everybody, but you had a great clutch pitcher in the Bulldog, Orel Hershiser, and then you had complementary players. You could say they played over their head, beat Oakland, but the thing is, they came to play when the lights were the brightest. And that's kind of opposed to the teams we've seen the last few years that are good teams, but nobody's really stepped out for the Dodgers the last 3 or 4 years. That team is just kind of collection of maybe 2 stars, a lot of great role players. But they had it when it really counted, and they had a lot of confidence, and had a great coach in Tommy Lasorda who made players believe in themselves.
Yeah, when Cleveland signed Orel Hershiser in '94, I believe, and it was like, wow, we have Orel Hershiser. I couldn't believe it, and although he was older, so he couldn't help as much. But of course, Kirk Gibson's home run is, of course, that's one of the game one in '88 was has to be one of the greatest moments in baseball history.
Well, Peter, he didn't play another game in that series, yet he was the MVP. That was not the closing game when he hit that home run, but it changed the series in the Dodgers' favor as he hit the homer off the best reliever in baseball. Never played another game, but was MVP. And that you look at a guy that was persistent. He's in the clubhouse, stretching his legs, working out. Tommy goes back there about every other inning. You okay? Yeah. Tommy says, get a bat. And he barely can walk up to the plate. And that was a great at-bat against, Oakland. And the thing is, he fouled off so many pitches, and then when that home run he hit was gone in a flash. I mean, I still think that was divine intervention. He kind of waved at it. He waved at it. It was just jacked out of that park quickly. One of the fastest line drives I've ever seen out of a ballpark.
Yeah, that was just. I think I was watching it, and and of course when he was pumping his fists, going around, and then he's staggering around the bases. It's like I had never seen anything like that before.
Well, there's no way he can even get. He couldn't beat out a ground ball if he had to hit it. There's no way he can get a double. I mean, look at all the odds against him getting that hit or winning the game. He had a runner at first base. He hits a 2-run home run. But if he had a ground ball anywhere, the Dodgers would have lost that game. And they got the ball into the air, they would have been out of the inning. It would have been all over. So he pretty much did. The only thing he can do is hit a home run. He couldn't make it to second base on a play that would be a triple. So there's a lot of odds against him. But you know what? Sometimes you got to beat the odds to be a champion.
Well, it was off Dennis Eckersley, right?
Yes, sir.
And Eckersley, of course, one of the greatest. Was that his great big year in '88?
Well, he had a lot of outstanding years, as you know. He was quite a starter. I think he won 20 or more games 2 times in his career with Boston, and he was great that year. But he was solid in a lot of years with Oakland. I think he led the league in saves for a number of years in a row. He was a fine pitcher. I don't think the pitch that he threw was a bad pitch. It was over the plate, but it was away. Gibson just hit it out. You know,
as I recall, Eckersley was the best closer in baseball that year.
He was. He was the best in baseball that year, yeah. So the odds were in his favor. So the Dodgers defied the odds.
Believe it or not, I saw, Eckersley started in Cleveland, and I saw his no-hitter in '77 at Cleveland Municipal Stadium.
He was an amazing pitcher. A guy had a lot of confidence and had a great slider, pretty good fastball, moved the ball around. He was a very solid pitcher, but he says, a lot of people remember him for giving up a home run to Gibson. He tells people, I was actually a pretty good pitcher. I did other things like that. That's unfortunate for him. I mean, he's a commentator. You see him on TV now. He's a good guy. But unfortunately, people remember him for giving up that home run. And remember when Gibson hit the shot in the show Eckersley and how his head just kind of turns, like you see guys in tennis? So he's remembered for giving up that home run, but he was a fine, outstanding pitcher and was very good in the clutch his entire career. But that's baseball. Even Mariano Rivera gave up some hits for the Yankees in the World Series and in the playoffs. Nobody's perfect.
Now, I just want to change the topic. I'm thinking about L.A. sports, and I don't know if this rings a bell, but one time the L.A. Rams had a quarterback competition between as I recall, and I think they were on the cover of Sports Illustrated, Vince Ferragamo, Pat Hayden, and Joe Namath. Do you remember that?
Yes, they did. And Namath, of course, is kind of hanging on. Ferragamo and Hayden were both pretty good quarterbacks, and Ferragamo played most of the game against Pittsburgh in the Super Bowl through kind of a key interception late, and Bradshaw hooked up with a long touchdown. The Rams lost. The Rams were actually in that game with Ferragamo going for the go-ahead touchdown. The Pittsburgh, like a great team, came through in the clutch. And Bradshaw, despite what people think about him, was an excellent player. Had a great gun, tremendous receivers, great players around him. He's kind of filled his role, but he was very good in the pressure, good in the clutch. And you look at most sports, Peter, guys have to be great in the clutch to win championships in any sport, at any level.
Did Joe Namath play much for the Rams?
No, I think he only played a few games. He threw a lot of picks. He couldn't move very well. He had bad knees, as you know. They kind of got him at the time because of his name, but his best years were way behind him. He was 2 or 3 years past his prime. Ferragamo and Hayden were decent quarterbacks. Hayden was about 5'11", 6 feet, and Ferragamo was tall. He had the Hollywood looks. They were very even. Vince had a stronger arm, was bigger, but neither was that much better than Eller. They were fine quarterbacks, not great, but, good quarterbacks. Namath was well past his prime.
Well, still, it must have been cool having him in L.A. for a little bit.
Well, that's why I got him, because, L.A. I mean, L.A., they like stars. They like Hollywood stars. They like celebrities. And they go after players like Mookie Betts, who's a fine overall player for the Dodgers. The Dodgers also always have to have a player like that, Mookie, or even for the Lakers. It's always important for them to have a player of star quality to bring in the people. That's what Hollywood and L.A. is all about.
Yeah, for me, Joe Namath was like the coolest guy in the world, and the first NFL player to wear white shoes, and then those Noxzema shaving cream commercials with Farrah Fawcett. Watch Joe Namath get creamed.
Yeah,
Joe Namath.
I don't know if you ever saw Joe Namath in high school, Peter. Joe Namath could run pretty good in high school before he had all his knee injuries. I saw some highlights of him. I saw one of those specials on NFL Network. And take him back to his junior high and high school days. He was a very good athlete. But when he was younger, he could run the ball pretty good. But he had a lot of knee injuries after that, which took away his momentum and lateral movement. But he could motor pretty good when he was in high school. He was fairly fast.
And he had the jump pass. Does anybody do that anymore, the jump pass?
Yeah, nobody since Tim Tebow.
Okay. But, Namath did it, and I was just thinking of it. It's funny how sports changes over time and certain things you never hear about. But I remember Namath did it, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
Remember they had a very good running back with Matt Snell. In fact, in that Super Bowl, Namath basically handed the ball off to Matt Snell, who was just an okay running back, but he had a great game. Namath did not pass for a lot of yards in the Super Bowl. They won for defense and the running of Matt Snell. Kind of old school when they beat Baltimore.
Yeah, and their coach, Weeb Eubank, very unusual first name, Weeb.
Yeah, good dude, man, big dude. Did a great job with that team that particular year and for a few seasons. And, hopefully the New York Jets will come back and be a playoff contender one of these years. I like their uniforms, by the way, and their colors.
Are the Raiders playing in Las Vegas this year?
Yes, sir. That stadium is ready to go.
So their first year in Las Vegas.
A beautiful stadium. I don't know if they're going to have fans at first or only have it one-quarter filled, but it's a beautiful stadium. Not as expensive as the Rams, but, a big thing for Vegas. You got Derek Carr and Gruden and a lot of guys, and I think they have some potential this year. Maybe not to win their division, but to be a playoff contender.
The Raiders under Al Davis was such an interesting team. The whole going from Oakland to L.A., bouncing back and forth between Oakland. They're going back and forth, and I was surprised they go back to Oakland, and then for a while it was very strange to me. L.A. has two teams, all right, and then they didn't have any teams for some time in L.A. No NFL teams.
And all of a sudden you have two back-to-back, playing in the same stadium now, the Chargers and the Rams. The Chargers have Tyrod Taylor that will start, and then the rookie from Oregon will back him up. A little weak in that position right now. We'll see what happens, but I still think they have a lot of talent on defense, and hopefully they can get the running game going. Their coach is a former running back, so I think for them, the Chargers, the 500 season will be a good year, but you never know. I'm not that familiar with a lot of their players. I know they have some pretty good guys on defense, but some question marks at quarterback. And the QB position is so important. I think you have to have an outstanding quarterback or have a great team around your quarterback to contend for a conference championship.
Well, it's been tough for San Diego. They lose the NBA team moves up. What was the NBA team? And Bill Walton played down there for a while. And
were they the Braves at one time? Buffalo Braves to San Diego?
Yeah, and I think it was the San Diego Clippers. And it became the L.A. Clippers, and now you've got the L.A. Chargers have become the San Diego Chargers. Are many, considering the distance between San Diego and L.A., are many San Diego people still supporting the Chargers in L.A.?
I think so. I don't think the Chargers will pick up that many fans in Los Angeles. It's only like 125 miles apart. And maybe they'll get more. Here's the whole thing, Peter. If you win, you get more fans. And they're going to play in a beautiful stadium. So when everything's back to normal, I like their uniforms. I think they have a pretty good organization now. I like their players. So the whole thing about them is you got to win. When you win, people will become interested in you, and they'll come to the games. It's all about winning. I'm not saying you have to win it all, but you got to be competitive. At least 500 or better, especially in L.A. Otherwise, people don't come. There are fair weather fans in Los Angeles and in Southern California.
Who was the longtime Chargers quarterback? You would know that.
John Hale?
Recently, in recent years.
Oh, Philip Rivers.
Is he gone?
Yeah, he's playing for Indianapolis now. Okay.
Yeah, you see, you're talking to a historian here. I hardly know anything that's going on right now. But
he's been around forever. But he kind of dropped off the last couple of years. I thought his arm strength had deteriorated a little bit. But he's like about 39. He's a really tough guy. But I thought they had a chance to win some games the last couple of years, and he didn't come through in the fourth quarter. He missed some passes. I thought his leadership was a little bit weak. Now he won't admit to that. I'm just telling you from watching him play. There's a few games they should have won, and he couldn't get the job done. But Indianapolis didn't really have a good quarterback system, and so he was available. So they probably signed him for 2 or 3 years. So they have that Brister guy, who I think did a good job. They wanted this dude from the Chargers. So we'll see what goes on with him. He's been healthy throughout his career, so he's been he has a dog mentality. So he'll fight you to the end. But like Brady and a lot of guys that are older like that, they just don't quite have the arm strength they used to have. They don't move quite as well in the pocket.
Well, I'll give you some history, some Rams history. The Rams started in Cleveland, I think 1937, maybe around that time, and they won the NFL. Huh?
Yeah.
And they won the NFL title in 1945 in Cleveland. The championship game was in Cleveland, and it's funny. Back then, the NFL, of course, was not very popular, and Cleveland Stadium had like 80,000 seats. I think it was only half full, or maybe even less than half. But Bob Waterfield, we won it by one, I think 15-14, and then they moved to L.A. for the 46th season, and then we got the Browns in the new league that started in 46. So that's kind of a strange set of circumstances that we won a title in that with the Cleveland Rams. My dad saw him play like back in the late 30s, 40s, and they moved to L.A. and then Cleveland gets this new team that actually does very, very well, and so it's very unusual circumstances.
Well,
Bob Waterfield,
the Cleveland team, Peter. The Cavaliers finally won a championship. The Cleveland Indians are good every year, especially with Francona's manager, and they're always in the hunt. My question is, when are they going to win a championship in baseball? I know it's very tough. And then you have the Cleveland Browns in football. They're still trying to make the playoffs. But to me, the Indians have the best chance of any Cleveland team to win a title, and that's a baseball team.
The Cleveland fans, they don't give the ownership enough credit. We don't have a lot of money here, but they have an amazing scouting system and minor league system, and they keep developing players. We keep trading, established players that we can't afford, but they keep bringing in new guys, and they've just an amazing job of doing that. And they haven't had to rebuild, completely tear it all apart and have like a team that loses 110 games. They haven't, because they keep making these smart trades that a lot of the fans hate, because they hate seeing guys leave. But I have to give them a lot of credit. And you're asking when they're going to win the World Series this year. Of course, I've been saying that since 1973, and sooner or later it's bound to come true.
It's kind of open season this year with a short season, and a lot of teams in the playoffs. They have a good chance as much as anybody. The Yankees have players hurt. They may not even make it in. Houston's not as good as they used to be. Watch out for the Oakland A's. Dodgers in the National League. The American League has better teams than the National League. I mean, you're going to have teams making the playoffs in the American League that are 10 games over 500. That won't happen in the National League. So Cleveland has a chance, but they're in the tougher league. They'll have to play very well to make it to the World Series. But they have the capability.
I just hope if they, by the time the World Series comes, they have fans in the stands. Because if they don't, it's going to be. I think it's going to be a World Series with no fans. To me, won't be very good.
Unfortunately, Peter, Cleveland's in the toughest division in baseball with Minnesota and the White Sox. You've seen all three teams within one loss of each other. All will make the playoffs. That's a great division. That's the best division in baseball this year.
Oh, okay. Right. I know Cleveland has been winning.
The White Sox have been building their team for the last 2 or 3 years, the Chicago team on the south side, and they're expected to be good eventually, and it's happening now. So, Minnesota is pretty much good every year. They just can't beat the Yankees in the playoffs. Cleveland is a solid team every year. And out of nowhere came the Chicago White Sox, but they've been building for this season over the past 3 or 4 years. White Sox have some strong young players and older players, so now it's a 3-team race. But that definitely is the best division in baseball. A lot of leagues only have maybe 2 teams over 500 in their division. So it's a tough, 18 games left, 20 games left. It's going to be a race to the finish.
Well, let's shift to NBA history and the L.A. Lakers, Shaq, Kobe, and that team, Shaq, Kobe, and the rest of those guys.
Well, they won 3 straight in early 2000s then, and then they lost in the finals to Detroit, and Shaq was traded, went to Miami, won a championship with Dwayne Wade. Kobe had his issues, off the court. He had a lot of lousy players around him for a while when he led the league in scoring back-to-back years, and Steve Nash won 2 MVPs in a row. I think Kobe averaged over 35 points a game one season and 31 the next. Then they brought in Pau Gasol, a few other players. Ron Artest changed his name every 5 years, and they won a couple of championships back-to-back. And then, of course, Kobe eventually retired. Different type of season, of course, here with LeBron James and Anthony Davis. Lakers have been a bad team for 6 or 7 years in a row. And you have 2 superstars kind of surrounded by a lot of other players that are basically just average or mediocre. And, I'm a Laker fan, but I say it like it is. The Clippers have more players than the Lakers. The Lakers rely on 2 superstars who basically have to play either good or great every game and hope to get something from other players. And that's very tough in the playoffs because guys have up and down games. You look at Murray for Denver, he had maybe 35 points. I think it was game 2, only had 14 in game 3. A lot of players like him are great one game, then they kind of fall off the next game. He was 5 for 17. But the top players, the first team All-NBA pros, they play well every game. Sometimes great, other times very well. That's Kawhi Leonard, and very few players are like that, the Greek freak. Paul George is sometimes great, other times he kind of gets lost. When he's great, watch out for the Clippers.
You know, shifting back to the Shaq Kobe era, I remember so well. I don't think I'd ever seen a guy like Shaq, who was a player that big and strong. He'd get the ball, and he'd have the opposing center, and he'd just back him in, and then dunk the ball. It's like unbelievable. It's like, how are you supposed to? And so and then of course and Kobe was a tremendous player. But and then they had these other guys. We had, of course, I remember Tyronn Lue coming off the bench, and of course he comes here and coaches Cleveland with title.
Guard AI Allen Iverson when Philadelphia won that first game of the championship, and Iverson hit a shot and stepped over Lue and stared at him. Lue came off the bench. In fact, I met Lue and a lot of Lakers at a Lakers media day in the early 2000s. And Kobe and Shaq were busy doing their photos and things like that. But I saw Shaq in person. They played in Bakersfield here once, and he was sitting down. But he walked past me on the court there in El Segundo. I couldn't believe a guy that big can be a basketball player. Had a big Superman tattoo on his left shoulder. I mean, he was huge. I'm thinking, this guy runs back and forth, man. And I talked to Derek Fisher and Lou, and I talked to about 3 or 4 guys that were pretty much my size as far as height. All the other guys were huge. Saw Phil Jackson. It was real exciting going down there during that time when the Lakers were on top, the Shaq and Kobe show. But I don't know if you saw when Dikembe Mutombo tried to guard Shaq years ago in the finals, and Shaq backed him up and basically lifted him up and stuffed right over his face one time. And Dikembe was not wagging. He was not wagging his finger at Shaq.
I remember, and when the Lakers played the Sixers, and Sixers won Game 1, I think in L.A. And then the Lakers won Game 2 in L.A. And then so it's 1-1. At the end of the game, Allen Iverson was applauding, and I don't know. And then Bill Walton was commentating, and he said, "Oh, is this the new face of the NBA?" And then Kobe was from Philadelphia, says, we're going to Philadelphia and we're going to rip their hearts out. And they won they won 3 straight. But I thought oh, come on, that's a little bit hard. That's your hometown.
Well, Peter, let me ask you this: does LeBron James say that, or Anthony Davis? They don't say that, do they? Nobody really can talk that way. Kobe Bryant, that's why he had a Mamba mentality.
Right.
I mean, these guys are good players. AD and LeBron are very good players, but they don't have the same mentality that Kobe Bryant had. And I'm a longtime Laker fan. I'd tell it to anybody. Kobe wanted to whip you, man, out there. He didn't want to be your friend on the court. See, and the thing is, he wasn't friends with a lot of guys off the court. A lot of players didn't like Kobe when they played against him. When he retired, people talked about how he loved him. When he was playing, a lot of guys didn't like him. He wasn't trying to be your friend on the court or off the court. He didn't go to dinner with a lot of opposing players, basically. He wasn't even that friendly with Dwayne Wade. Dwayne Wade gave him a cheap shot in the All-Star game, and Kobe had a broken nose after that. I mean, he's different. LeBron, a lot of guys today want to be friends with everybody, not just on their own team, but with other teams. It's a different NBA. They got solidarity for this and that. Kobe wanted to beat you just like Michael Jordan, and he wanted to beat you bad. He had no problems telling you that. He wasn't out there to be your friend and to be your buddy. And neither was Larry Bird. Different mentality players now as they were in the 80s and early 90s.
Of course, when it was kind of well known that Shaq and Kobe had some conflict during their playing times and then playing days, and then I saw an interview where they were in recent years where they were talking and about that, and he was basically what came out is, Kobe was telling Shaq, that he felt Shaq wasn't. Shaq had just so much ability, just so much strength, and it's like their conflict was based on his belief that Shaq could play harder, and that's what he wanted out of Shaq.
Well, Shaq didn't play harder because he was not in good enough shape. But I will say, kudos to Shaq. He always played great in the NBA Finals. I think he was 3-time NBA Finals MVP. Averaged well over 30 points a game and double digits, rebounds, and assists. Shaq was big when it really counted when he was in shape. He did not look that good against Detroit in their 4th try at a championship. He got outplayed by Ben Wallace, who maybe was 6'10". Wallace was a great defensive player. Shaq looked out of shape, did not look like he was into it. That's when they had, Malone. He came back after the knee injury. They had Gary Payton, past his prime. And they had Kobe that season who had a lot of issues off the court, the rape trial. So Lakers that season did not have they were not together as a team. They had a lot of issues. A lot of it was due to Kobe and other things. But Shaq, I think, could have been better. He was great. I thought he could have been better in his career. He could have been a better player in his last 3 or 4 years. The reason why he wasn't in shape. He had heel problems, hip problems. He tried to get in shape playing basketball. He didn't work out during the off season then, stay in shape. As an athlete now, you got to work in the off season to be in shape, especially when you get 32 years old or older. And Shaq didn't do that. So even though he played for until he was 36, he wasn't really that good his last couple of years. Did you see him with Boston or with Phoenix? He was a shadow of what he used to be. Why not try to be great your entire career? He hung on because he got paid money. So that's a knock I have on him. And that's on him, not anybody else. He didn't work hard enough to get in shape. You could do it in your 20s. But as he got older, he went from 280 to about 340. He gained weight. He had to spend more time on the bench resting. He was not in shape when he came into training camp. He thought he could get in shape on his own. It doesn't really work that way.
Mark Heffernan, we're out of time. Do you have any final words for our listeners?
I'm going with the Lakers tonight.
Going with the Lakers tonight. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. It's a real honor and a privilege to talk LA sports, and I wish you all the best. And you're one of the big stars with this amazing Mark Mancini, the Stables Network. I know you're one of the big stars here. So.
You say I'm a star? I don't see any stars around here. Are there falling stars? Maybe I'm a falling star. Thanks a lot, man, for having me on the program.
Oh, well, thank you, and we'll do it again. God bless you.
God bless you, Peter.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Next week's guest will be Dante Powell. He'll return guest, former San Francisco Giants player, and wonderful to have him, wonderful human being. And dear listener, may the road rise to meet you. May the wind be at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face and rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. Good night, everybody. Thanks again, Mark.